Welcome back to Bulletproof Mindset, your go-to podcast for health, fitness and entertainment. I'm your host, Dale Crossar. In today's episode, we're talking about the 6 commandments you have to live by if you're going to implement lifting weights into your journey. Bonus, if you don't implement lifting weights into your journey, you will live a less quality of life than those who do. This was a really fun episode to record, so I'll not spend too much time in the intro, but the 6 principles or 6 points I've highlighted that we need to make sure that we're doing if we're going to make it inside the gym. Regardless if your goal is to build muscle, to build strength, or just to be overall more resilient, stronger, healthier and happier, these are the 6 principles you need to apply. Now, as always, if you are new around here, one of the best ways you can support me and the show that I have is by leaving a 5-star rating on Spotify or subscribe to the channel on YouTube at Bulletproof Mindset. If you want to follow me on Instagram, one of the next episodes we'll be doing is a Q&A episode, so I want to hear your guys' question. If you're on Spotify, you'll have the ability to comment below this video. Let me know what questions you've got on your fitness journey or just in general, and I'll answer them on the next episode. Head over to my Instagram at Coach Crossar and the podcast page at Bulletproof Mindset __. And without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Here's a fun fact for you. If you don't have any sort of lifting weights in your weekly routine, you are guaranteed to live a poorer quality of life. And it might be a harsh statement, but it's one of the reasons we're pushing the message forward of lifting weights. You are guaranteed to have a weaker body, less muscle mass, and that ultimately leads into a poorer quality of life. And there's even some nuanced things like you wouldn't expect. Less muscle mass, meaning less blood flow, sore joints, achy joints, limited range of motion, and of course, poorer brain cognition. Now, that's not what today's episode is about. We're actually going to talk about the 6, I think I'm going to call this the 6 commandments of lifting weights. So hopefully hear that message. And most of you guys listening to this, of course, is like, look, I'm bought into the idea of lifting weights, and you like the kind of guests that we bring on the show, and then you also like the nuance and the topics that we cover. So today we're going to go over, for you who do lift weights, what is the 6 principles that you want to live by when you are applying your weightlifting journey? So I think that's what we'll call the 6 commandments of resistance training. Commandment number, what do they say when it is the commandments in the books? Thou shalt not steal and all that sort of stuff. So the first one will be, thou shalt choose the right exercise. So point number 1 here, the first commandment, the first principle is exercise selection. Now, this might seem like an obvious one, but we need to make sure. I've kind of went back and forth with this, I think, over the years with being a personal trainer, being a coach, and even in my own journey right at the start. What makes the right exercise? Well, of course, the right exercise kind of strongly correlates with the goals that you have. For example, I have wall balls and ski ergs and rows in my current training split, but should I have that in all the time? Debatable. But the right exercise selection, there is a hierarchy of exercises that we want to pull from, and it always comes back to the compound lifts for me. If you are lifting weights in your routine, in your cycle of training, there should always be compound movements that imitate daily life. If we truly want to live even if it comes to building muscle as well, I was going to just skip over that, but building muscle in a stronger, healthier and longer life, then we need to make sure we're ticking the box in all movement patterns. So what would be those movement patterns? Well, we got a press in front of us. So compound lifts like our bench press, barbell, dumbbells, whatever. We got a pull towards, we got a press above, a pull down. We also have a squat and we have a hinge. Now, I like to add in calf raises as well, so I like to look at the major joints, but just have a think about how your body moves. Like, you want to press up, you want to lift up, you want to push up, you want to pull down. So I like to think about every joint within the body. Like, if that joint moves, whether it's your wrist or your elbows, you've got the rotation side of things, but the main movement patterns would be those that I've just mentioned. And within those movement patterns, there is machines and cables and all that great equipment out there that can bias those movements and get strong in those movement patterns. But the best way to approach your exercise selection is always having some element of compound lifts, especially if you're not going to compete in bodybuilding. And remember, competing in bodybuilding and trying to look a certain way are 2 different things. Bodybuilding is all about really being so detailed in how you approach the sculpting of the body. So they're judged on this balance and this symmetry. And to an extent, obviously, when we're chasing aesthetic goals, we like the idea of having that same pursuit. But it doesn't have to be. And I would make an argument, this is why it's genuinely on my mind to do another bodybuilding competition, to utilise compound movements and not utilise machines as much, to show the value that these compound movements have. Now, compounds absolutely have their limits and have their downsides, but in terms of the exercise selection that you pick, always make sure that there's some element of compound moves in there. This will set you up for that stronger, that healthier and longer lifestyle that you can live. And some of you guys might be like, well, why, if I can do a seated chest press or a seated shoulder press, it's more comfortable for me to do. Just because it's more comfortable doesn't mean it's the right thing for you. This is why everyone avoids squats and deadlifts. Oh, my back's sore, my knee's sore. It's like, well, why don't we address the problem? And I've got a fantastic story to share, and I'm actually so excited to work with this person over the next kind of 6-7 weeks. This person hasn't had any mobility in their ankles, no mobility in their wrists, their shoulders, limited all over. I've actually got 4 clients that I kind of fall into the same category that I've just recently started working with. And in one session of doing movement assessments, working on their mobility, it's unlocked us, or unlocked the ability to start adding a bit of resistance in their squat. Now, when they were going to physios and physicians and through the NHS and all that sort of stuff, these guys were told, you just need to avoid those movements. Don't go to the gym. Nah, the gym's not the right thing for you. And I'm like, blows my fucking mind. Absolutely. It actually pisses me off as well. It's like, you want to maybe ease up. Motion is lotion. Movement is medicine. We need to the less we move a joint, the less we move our bodies in a specific pattern, the tighter the tendons, the muscles and everything around that movement pattern gets. And guess what? Life isn't done in machine format. So if we get strong just sitting down and doing a shoulder press, that doesn't imitate our lifestyle. So when we're out walking, and if every other muscle group and we go to catch something, or we fall, or our body moves in this jerk reaction, then it's going to be weakened in that state. And that's how people get hurt. That's how people get injured. Now, when we're lifting compound movements, there is stability. Our body needs to stabilise to press the dumbbell above head. It then doesn't become just a shoulder exercise. It becomes a core exercise, our back exercise, a leg exercise, because our whole body is working intrinsically. So our exercise selection is so important with this. And look, I get it. I've had fantastic bodybuilders on the show, and I love the sport of bodybuilding. Absolutely has its place in training cycles. But if you're not going to compete to step on stage, then put a majority of your training focus on these compound lifts. And I'll do a side episode on this, where how do you grow a specific muscle group? There is value to have these big compound days and then interject these machine exercises or cable exercises on a separate day that doesn't require a huge amount of intensity or fatigue, and that creates this additional stimulus. But I would say if you're not used to lifting compound weights, you are in for a fantastic journey. Like, I love it when a client comes to me, right? And I had someone recently, if I shout him out, Jack, a great client, and he's kind of been pulled into the bodybuilding world when he's went through his personal training before, or through his coaching before, or being coached, should I say, And I've brought him on, and he's like, did you do deadlifts? Nah, I never really done deadlifts. Did you do squats? Kind of done the leg extension, that. And I said, right, cool. Let's look at doing this. And when we started that journey, it's been really hard to do because there's a lot of instability issues, there's a lot of movement issues, motion, mobility, and range of motion issues. So we've addressed all of them over the last kind of 12 weeks, and now we can start to ramp up the weight, and you can already see there's more coordination happening in his body when he's approaching this. So it's back to the point, you don't want to avoid these movements. These movements are so crucial to life, and I get it. I get the whole kind of argument that, well, there is better exercises above it. Better for what? What is the goal? Because I guarantee you don't care what size your quads you are when you get into your later 40s and you've got kids and you've got a family, and maybe you're climbing the ladder in your job, or maybe you're self-employed, you've got your own business. Yes, you want to kind of look a certain way, but most people want to feel good. They want to have the ability to know, you know what, I'm feeling strong, and there is no better feeling than feeling strong, because with strength comes confidence, and that confidence carries over into your body image. So, as I said, exercise selection, so important. And yes, you can make arguments, or you'll see arguments in the world of all exercises aren't created equal, but all exercises have value. Absolutely. But you can't skip over the fact that for the pros and cons that all exercises have, compounds rank way higher than any machine exercises, and I'll die on that rock. Challenge me if you disagree, because the conclusion that we'll come to is that you're wrong and I'm right, okay? On to command number 2, or principle number 2, and that is nicely leading on to the technique of the exercise. 2024, folks, we're just about to move into 2025. We have so much information available to us. Why are we not spending time practicing the movements? And I wonder why it is. I wonder if we've got better machines and we have new fancy equipment, that technique on compound lifts, we're getting lazy with it, because if we sit in a machine, it's like, oh, okay. Even on machines, it's very hard to fuck up a machine, but you'll see people kind of doing half reps, because what are they focused on? The ego's like, there's a girl over there lifting half your weight, mate. There's a girl over there lifting the same weight as you. You're a man, you need to be the alpha, you need to lift more weight than us. So the ego takes over, and it's like, oh, my friend's watching, I need to lift heavier for them. So it's this undisputed, or what's the word I'm looking for? Unsaid beef between you and your training partner, that you need to lift more than each other. See if you can scrap all that and just focus on the technique of the movement. Are you getting full range of motion? Do you have the ability to control it on the way down? Can you add a pause in it? Like, all these things will build more muscle, build a stronger body, and ultimately get you towards your goal quicker and better. I actually made a point in this in my stories during the week there. See, the whole hybrid athletes, they do not know what the fuck they're doing. They honestly, I think they have the best coaches in the world, but I think so many of them are getting advice from so many different areas of their life, and it's just a clusterfuck putting them all together. The technique side of things is what I see absolutely butchered in that world. I love watching it. I'm a big fan of it. But some of the top athletes that we're watching in this hybrid space, they rule out the technique of the exercise, and it's only a matter of time before they get injured. And what we then see is everyone else coming into the hybrid world, why the fuck are they picking up injuries so much? Because they've not built this resilient, strong body. They've not focused on the right exercise selection. They're kind of jumping stage 1, 2 and 3 and just going straight into stage 4. Yep, I'm going to compete. I'm ready to get into this world of races and all sorts. But the technique of an exercise is so important. If you're not doing an exercise correctly, that exercise is now changed. So an example would be, let's say, a bicep curl. This is one that is butchered often from the Giga Chads in the gym, where rather than being strict and control lifting your bicep up, they're swinging their whole body. That's not a bicep exercise anymore. That becomes a hip thrust, because how much the swing is going on. So the technique of an exercise is important, because there's a reason that exercise exists in your program. And if we're not carrying out the technique correctly, then the exercise doesn't have the same value of what you want it to be. Is there times to throw technique out the window? I guess so. More for an experienced lifter. Technique, I mean, like, in the other hand of this, I see it all the time. We can be very dogmatic about technique, where it's so strict. The back has to be like fully straight. Like, let's take a bent over row, for example, or a bench single arm row, where you're supported on the bench and it's like, right, back nice and straight, keep that arm nice and stiff. Our body's supposed to be able to move and bend, especially our spine. And that's one that I do see this kind of conflicting battle between two sides in the deadlift world, for example, because someone will have a rounded back depending on how long their torso is, because of how far they need to go to the ground. Look at any high performance strong athlete. Usually they're above 6'3", so their deadlift pattern is going to look very different to someone like me. And I am built to be my body shape and body genetics, I've got these kind of relatively average arm lengths, and I've got a good proportion to my torso and my legs, which makes that deadlift a lot more comfortable as opposed to someone with longer legs and longer limbs. So when your body type is maybe a bit out the norm, you need to expect that the technique that you have for that exercise is going to be a little bit different. But focus on the technique, focus on the ability of practicing the exercise. See, when you think about it, the technique of an exercise is something that most people start to skip. But if you had to kind of ask that person, right, what's your favourite sport? I love playing football. I love playing basketball. And you're like, right, okay, let's just start playing the game. Like, let's just start like going straight into competitive sport. Like, you'd be like, no, I should probably put a bit of practice into some of the movements, work on my dribbling, work on the drills, my agility, being able to balance on one foot, like everything that goes into that sport. The same applies when it comes to exercise. Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes just jumping straight into the deep end and learning can be a strategy, but it's a pretty stupid strategy. And with that silly strategy applied, risk of injury shoots up. Now, if you talk to anyone who's injured themselves, the most heartbreaking thing to get is an injury, especially if you have so much love and passion towards what you're doing. We saw it with James previously when he like maybe about 100 episodes ago when he was going through his knee injury, and I see it on a day-to-day basis, especially with the rise of the hybrid movement. It puts a lot more stress on our body, and emphasis needs to be put on recovery. Speaking of recovery, actually, I never put that down as one of these points. So bonus point, recovery is key too. Maybe we'll circle back to that. But I think when when we're looking at the principles of what goes into lifting weights and what commandments do we need to live by, technique is definitely up there. Okay, on to point number 3. Principle number 3, commandment number 3. I'm saying these 3 because I don't know what I'm going to call this episode, but we are talking about intensity, progressive overload. It doesn't matter what we're doing in the gym. If we are not progressively overloading that movement, that exercise in our training block, we will not get stronger. We will not build muscle. We will not get more resilient in our body. So what is the common ones? Well, we've done a whole episode on this. I've done this episode a couple of times now. I'm going to link them below if you want to dive deeper into what those are. I believe there is 11 different ways you can progressively overload your training. I'll touch on a few of them just now, but definitely check that episode out. I think it's about 50 minutes long. It is one of my favourite topics to talk about with clients, because when we think about getting stronger and making the training a little bit more difficult, everyone thinks of doing more reps, doing more weight. And there's, as I said, 9 other principles within that we can touch on. Now, more reps, more weight is a bit an easy one. We can add more sets, we can add more frequency, how often we train within a week. But then the other parts is like things that you don't really think about. Dropping your rest times is a fantastic point. And kind of splitting out how you program your training exercises. There's the tempo, so you can slow the tempo down on some exercises. You can add a pause in. There's so many other ones. But let's talk more about the intensity, okay? Intensity is one that I never really considered much of until I started training people. And it's some of my clients will be listening to this. I think we've all got these people, so they're doing their exercise. And it's never squats. Sometimes it is squats, actually, I tell a lie. But it's always like an exercise that they're doing. They're like, so you're busy at the weekend? And I'm like, whoa, why are you having this conversation? Fucking double that weight, because that there's no intensity there. And this usually does happen at the beginning stages of someone's training, where they are just sort of working on the technique, getting some numbers, getting their baseline numbers on the board. But that kind of highlighted to me, I was like, wow, people think just because you're doing an exercise and you're doing reps and you're doing a rep range, then it doesn't mean that you're actually in that progressive overload. So the important part to take away from this point is we need to understand where we're at. We need to track to some extent, or we need to be following a structure. If you're just going in and winging it from every exercise that you go through, it's going to work for a little while, right? It will work. I can't not acknowledge that, because it's something that I've done personally, and it usually works when we've got a high amount of frequency. And what that means is, if you're committing 5-6 days to the gym, there's kind of not less emphasis, but you get away with more. You get away with the kind of shitty programming, the shitty structure that you're following. But as that starts to dwindle, you lose interest, because you start to think to yourself, I was seeing results, but now I'm not. That's the body adapting. The adaptation process of exercise, of lifting weights, of resistance training is what we're after. And without that adaptation, without this progressive overload, I wouldn't say you're wasting your time, but you're not pushing forward towards your goals. Oh, don't get me wrong, I'll sometimes come into the gym and I'm like, you know what? I just want to work out because my head is I've got so much going on in my brain. I just want to get my heart rate elevating. I just want to lift some weights. And I have the experience and the intuition now of 10 plus years of lifting that I can pick some 3 compound lifts and carry on, and that can be a good workout. Have I added muscle? Have I built strength? Probably not, but I've got a workout in. They're okay to do from time to time, especially if you're an experienced lifter with, I don't know, 3-4 years under your belt. I'd still encourage, like, sometimes some newer clients, this can be the right thing to do as well, because they have so much going on and they feel like a failure if they don't get into that workout session. The kind of backtrack on that one is like, right, cool, do that. If that kind of gets you in and then gets you back on that momentum, gets you back adding confidence. There's a story of Squat University's book. I've actually got it here. My wee bookcase behind me. So if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, Rebuilding Mile, this was a fantastic book. But there is a fantastic story in here about I think it's obviously made up, because there's no chance in hell someone's carrying a fucking bull on their shoulders up a hill. But the principle in there kind of highlights the point of, look, basically there's a story of a kid, and he puts the calf on his shoulders and he carries it into the village every single day. And as he grows, he gets bigger and bigger. And obviously as the calf grows, it goes from, I don't know, I think it's like, it says 50 pounds in the book to like, I don't know what a bull's worth, so let's say 300 pounds, probably more. But he's carrying this bull every single day, and he has the ability to carry it because what he's done is added these little micro challenges into his daily routine that has then allowed him to get stronger and stronger. Now that's where this also gets butchered. So it has to be the right amount of intensity. Intensity isn't just taking every exercise to failure. It's about just doing a little bit more than what you did last time. As we said, in fact, wearing the t-shirt here, Mind Pump guys. This is from what they hammer home all the time. We have to do as little as possible to elicit the most amount of change. So we want to do, like, I done it the other day with the workshops that I was running. Everyone's doing leg raises, right? And I was like, right, I want a 3 to 5 second descent. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, legs back up. When we're running through that, one of them says, like, I used to do hundreds of these when I was in doing my workout classes before. And I said, would you rather do 50 reps of something, or would you rather do 6? And it doesn't, the only difference between those two is you spend longer on one and you still get the same result. Of course you want to do what's less. Like, so that's where the right intensity applies here. So yes, just because you should doesn't mean, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And that holds true to every single exercise that you do. So how do you kind of get through this? I do a baseline week with every program that I set for my clients and for myself. That baseline week is, I may have concluded a bunch of exercises in a certain order, and I write them down, and I go in and I go, right, I'm going to pick a relatively light weight, and I try and hit the rep range. If your program doesn't have rep ranges, I would suggest add them in, right? Just add in 2 above, 2 below. So it could be 6 to 10, 8 to 12, or 3 to 5. Like, it doesn't necessarily matter, but get a rep range that you can work between. So week 1 on my programs, I will set this baseline, and the baseline week feels like you're not really working out, because all you're doing is getting some numbers on the board. So even though I've been squatting consistently for the last 10 years, if I put squats back into my program, I'll go in and I'll be like, okay, I need to do between 8 and 12 reps. From history, I know I can squat above 160, but I've not squatted 160 kilos since 5-6 months. So I'm going to go in at 60 kilo. And you might be going, but you could go in higher. Yeah, I could. But again, just because I can doesn't mean I should. I'll go in at 60 kilo and I'll assess as I get to that 8 to 12 rep range, how do I feel? Feel pretty good. So I'll maybe bump it up a 10, right? So I'll jump up to 80, jump up to 90, up to 100. And then once I've concluded, I'll then write a wee note and my phone's like, okay, you could probably start at 100. Next time I'm round to that part of the programming, I'm back in at 100 kilos. And then 100 moves to 110 by the end of that workout block. And then as I'm progressing through the weeks, I then get back up to that 160 relatively quickly. And this is where your rep ranges can be so valuable. So does that mean I'm not building any strength and muscle? No, it actually is a smarter approach in keeping me injury free. Because if I could maybe have jumped in at 140 and pushed myself a little bit more, but the risk of injury could jump up a little bit. Now, I'm using 60 kilo as an example. Theoretically, I'll probably work up to 100 pretty quickly. I just know for me that's been a good working weight that I've been at in the past. But if I do that 100 kilo set and I'm like, that felt heavy and I never got the reps I wanted to, then I'm dropping that weight back down. So being consistent with your training is absolutely important with this. Progressive overload and the intensity is key. We need that to happen. However, there is a fine line. Imagine a limiter between 1 and 10. We don't want to max out at 10 every single time. We want to get upwards of about an 8 and 9, right? We do want to be in that range. And the best way to get in that range is by having a structured program and following a consistent routine, like a consistent structure of, here's my rep range. If I get the upper part of that rep range, 1 set or 2 sets in a row, then I'm going to increase the weight. And that's the easy way to apply progressive overload. But as I say, check out the full episode I've done on other ways that you can add some nuance into your programming. Okay, nicely on to point number 4, principle number 4, command number 4. We are moving into the novelty, the nuance of programming. Phase your training programs. I don't know how many times I need to say this, but following the same training program for a year is the dumbest approach you could do. And look, let me take that back. It is better than not following a structure, but it is by far, you're leaving like 80% on the table by not phasing your training program, even if you're seeing results. And I'll go as far as saying that. And the reason I say that is because I could maybe list over 100 exercises that are really, really important. Hey, that's a good episode. I might actually do that as one of the next episodes. But if you've got 100 exercises that are so valuable and you're following a training program that has 15, 20 of them, you're leaving a lot on the table. And I noticed this myself. I followed the old 5x5 routine and it was all bilateral movement. It was all barbell stuff. And I found my hips were getting quite like achy and sore. And the worst thing about this whole thing was I stepped laterally, I can't even say the word. I stepped to the right, like rather than stepping in front of me one time, and my abductors were so sore. Done a sprint competition, and again, I could feel imbalances in my body. So to have a sort of balanced body, we need to phase our programming. Phasing your program, I would say you can go upwards of 6 to 8 weeks with this. And I would be honest, like I would say that's the top end of where you want to take your programming. Because you can't always add weight, you can't always add sets, you can't always keep progressing. There has to be some sort of change in your routine. This is where people add in deloads, but this is where I like to just change up the phase. Because as I mentioned on the previous point, as you change the phases of your training, you can you go into your baseline week, and that baseline week is almost like a deload, but it's not like a deload in the sense where if you struggle with consistency in the gym, that deload could make you go, okay, I'm sitting about the house and I'm going to just eat packets of crisps and drink Nutella. Yep, drink Nutella. I've been there before. I feel your pain. I actually want to do it right now. But the phasing of your programming is so important. So what does phasing your programming look like? This can be you change your set rep ranges. You can change the exercise order. You can change both. I would say like assess your goals. Let's say my goal is to compete in a powerlifting. I would want to just keep the big compound lifts in and change my rep ranges to get a little bit more endurance, and maybe change 1 or 2 exercises to complement the lifts that I'm doing. It doesn't necessarily matter. The main thing is that whatever you change it to, you stick to that for the next block and then change it again. And then change it again. And you're constantly cycling through that. That's why you can sort of map out 10 years of programming fairly quickly with this approach. As I say, the kind of thing to consider is your reps, your exercise order, in fact, go back to the previous point, the progressive overload episode that I done. You can apply all of those 11 principles, and that can be what you do. You can maybe pick 2 or 3 of them, and that's how you change it into the next one. I love programming. I honestly do. I think there's such an art to it, and I really like it when I've only got a handful of clients that have came to me and worked with them for so long. They're like, here, Dale, can you just take over the programming for me? And I'm like, absolutely. And I kind of map out everything that I want to do. I might do a wee YouTube video on this on how I put a program together. Let me know if you'd like to see that, because there is such an art to it. It's not just putting a random bunch of exercise together. And this is where my experience in applying the right level of knowledge to that is why I think I do a pretty good job at it from a coach perspective. So, phasing your training programming, seek the novelty is the what you're trying to do there. So if I'm stuck in 3 to 5 reps, this is why when you look at studies that say what is the best rep range to build muscle, and I'm looking at that and I'm like, okay, I've been doing 3 to 5 reps for the last 12 months. If I change that to 8 to 12, the novelty in that change, I will build muscle and I will build strength. Same again, if I change it to 15 to 20 reps, again, the novelty of that will reap rewards in terms of building strength and muscle. Now, how long you do a phase for? See, if you do upwards of 12 to 20 reps, those types of phases are so hard, especially if you change the rest times and you only make them 30 seconds. That is a lot of stress and strain on your body. I only do these phases for 3 weeks. I don't like to use it as a fat burning workout, but it is high impact. Heart rate is elevated. You're not getting enough time to rest. And I would only do this with someone who's been working with me, and it's usually like 4th, 5th, maybe even the 6th phase of training that I'm going through with them, just so they can experience what it's like. And what you end up doing through changing your phases as well, you get to appreciate the other stuff that you've been doing. So you might have been stuck in a bit of a rut and you're like, oh man, I really liked lifting low reps. And when you're doing your high reps, you're like, I hate this. But you know the value of doing high reps. When you go back to your low reps, you're stronger and fitter almost. So that's point number 4. Make sure you are phasing your training. Apply one of the progressive overloads and watch what happens. On to point number 5 then. Principle number 5, command number 5, we are talking about mobility and warming up, right? And I'll go a step further here, not just mindlessly warming up or doing mobility, but doing it specific for the movements that you're doing inside the gym. Out with the specific movements, I would say the best mobility routine to follow is specificity towards daily movement, right? So if I know when I go to put the plates out the dishwasher and I put them in the cupboard, or I put a dish up above my head and I've got a crunching feeling in my shoulder, I want to be practicing movements that helps that shoulder. Same if I find I've got like sore knees, I want to be addressing what the root cause of that is. If we truly want to have, you never want to be one of these people that's like, oh yeah, I used to do that, but here man, getting older sucks. You just, you'll not be able to do that in your 40s. You'll not be able to do that in your 50s. You'll not be able to do that in your 60s. It just always pushes on and on and on. And if you don't want to be one of those people, address your mobility. Address your warm-up. Jumping on the bike or the treadmill to get the heart rate risen before you go into your exercises is such a 2005 approach, right? We can make the mobilizing aspect of priming. This is the best way to look at it. It's like priming your body to get into the lift. Analogy I like to use is the candle, right? Bear with me with this one. Every joint and every major joint in your body has this fluid in it, right? And the best way to describe that fluid is like a candle or candle wax. So before the candle's lit, the wax is very rigid. Now, of course, a joint isn't like that. Some people's joints might, if you move it and it feels like it's an old rusty door hinge, then your joints are seizing up in you. And there's other vitamins and supplements that you can take it to help with that. It's usually a lack of omega-3s as a wee side bonus. But again, sometimes it can be a lack of movement. So as we start mobilising those joints, what happens to that fluid that's in there? Well, it's like the candle's been lit and it flows a little bit better. It's referred to as synovial fluid, if I remember right. One of the best things I learned from my PT qualification, actually, because it allowed me to piece this together. Obviously knew of it. I didn't know what concept was going on, but motion is lotion, as I said earlier on. And that's what we want to do. We want to prime the body to get into the weightlifting side of things. Another thing as well that's overlooked with this, banded exercise or even machine and cable stuff is a way of priming your muscles and your joints to get into that movement. You always see people do lat pull downs before their bench press because they're trying to warm up their lats and their back muscles to be able to pinch back and get into that position. These are all great strategies to use, and it doesn't need to be like the hypermobile guys that you see on Instagram where they've got the yoga blocks out and they're trying to do the splits. Like, flexibility and mobility are two different things. We want to focus on mobility. We want to focus on priming the body, priming the joints, priming the muscles to get into said exercise. Do not skip it. Do it at the start. Do it as a daily practice, and you'll be surprised of how little pain you will be in. A pain-free body isn't a strong body. That's the opposite of what I'm trying to say. A pain-free body is a strong body, and that's what the goal of striving towards kind of having this longevity and quality of life is. So we shouldn't just be dealing with pain on a daily basis. Sometimes there is things that can't be reversed, but if we can only have 5% incremental increase on that movement pattern that isn't as painful, then that's still an increase in my book. So worth doing. Okay, on to the last point, and we'll wrap up on this one. Point number 6, principle number 6, command 6 to live by when it comes to lifting weights. If you only focus on one thing when you're applying all these principles, it should be this one. Focus on getting strong. Don't focus on trying to burn fat. Don't focus on trying to burn calories. Focus on getting stronger in that lift. That will be one of the best metrics you can use that will help you lose weight in the scales, change your body shape, see that your confidence starts to rise, see that your mentality starts to increase, your energy starts to increase just by getting strong. I don't know why people think getting strong is lifting 1 rep maxes. That is not strong. Well, it's one element of getting strong, should I say. Lifting a weight for 10 times is getting strong. Lifting a weight for 15 times is getting strong. You can kind of get where I'm going. So it doesn't matter what phase of training you're in, what progressive overload you're doing, what exercise you're doing, the technique of that exercise, just getting a little bit stronger on each one of them as you progress through is the key principle, the key commandment to live by. There is times where to lift lighter weights to get stronger, but guess what? You're getting strong. So don't associate strong just with heavy weight. Getting strong is, wow, that exercise felt really difficult, now I can do it. I couldn't do a body weight squat, now I can. I couldn't do a 100 kilo squat, now I can. You get what I mean? It's all relative to where you are in your journey, and just remember that, right? So stop the comparing of, oh, they're lifting more than that. Who cares? They're also doing half reps, right? So just bring your voice back to your own journey, your own path, and just focus on those principles that we've gone over. So let me kind of recap. The 6 commandments are exercise selection. We've then got the technique of said exercise. We've then got intensity, the progressive overload part. We've then got the phasing of your training, seeking the novelty and nuance in the exercise, your training. Your mobility and your warm-up, specific towards what's going on in your life. And then number 6, getting strong. These are the commandments to live by when you are lifting weights, when you are adding resistance training, and why am I saying adding? When you are resistance training. And the point that I opened up with, you will dramatically improve your quality of life just by keeping relative to these commandments. You will live a far greater life or lifestyle than your peers if you are consistently lifting weights and resistance training than those around you. And this can be a hard one because I know a big percentage of the listeners are between the ages of, I think it's 30 and 40, right? This is the window where you start to go, oh, what happened to wee Paula, man? Like she was really fit in high school, and just all of a sudden, like our body's just starting to break down. Oh, look at him over there. Like, again, my mate, like we used to play football all the time, then he get injured, now he can't do any of these things anymore. The one thing that's going to bulletproof and protect us against fucking getting older is resistance, is lifting weights. So if you want to keep playing the sports that you love to play, you want to keep doing the things you love to do, you want to have the movement freedom to be able to play with our kids and our grandkids and go and explore the world, we need to lift weights. We genuinely do, and we need to follow these 6 principles, and that is a damn good way of stepping you towards that. So I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. If you have, consider leaving a 5-star rating if you haven't already. I'll love you and leave you. Follow me on Instagram. You can follow me at Coach Crossar, and you can follow the podcast page at Bulletproof Mindset __. Got some really exciting episodes and guest episodes coming up over the next couple of weeks, which I can't wait to share. And until next time, have a lovely day.